So that is my discussion of that. Next, I do want to talk about, I got a bad grade from the Connecticut State Medical Society, IPA, because I was using too many non-generic medications. I wish they'd look at my overall costs, because the way I write my prescriptions is much less expensive prescribing the more effective medications. For instance, I got a notice from one of the IPAs that my patient was taking 40 milligrams of generic Zocor at the same time they were taking a medicine for irregular heartbeat called amiodarone. And apparently the patient had been on this combination for years and years and years and was completely safe, but there was a statement to the effect that you have to prescribe less than 20 milligrams of the generic Zocor, which is simvastatin, when you also prescribe amiodarone. As a matter of fact, the amiodarone dose was very low. The non-HDL cholesterol was now perfect, but I am now obligated to change that medication. There are also more drug interactions with generic Zocor, and I believe that overall the costs for statin medication and the prevention of heart attack and the prevention of stroke and the reduction in the incidence of progressive kidney disease, yes, I said kidney disease, and I'm relating it to cholesterol. When you get that non-HDL cholesterol, subtract the good, the HDL, from the total, and that number needs to be 90. When you achieve those kinds of numbers, you very much slow the progression of chronic kidney disease onto dialysis, and it's harder to do that with generic Zocor called simvastatin. It's easier with Lipitor, it's easier with Crestor, it's easier with both of those with Zetia, and I think that these administrators of these organizations that make you prescribe generics all of the time are making very serious mistakes. In addition, for instance, you cannot, let's talk about the beta blockers. Let's be upfront. I have been a speaker for Lipitor, I have been a speaker for Benicar, I have been a speaker for Bistolic, and the reason I speak for these drugs is because in my, what I believe, unbiased experience, these are superior medications, and that's why I recommend them. I can get more effect with less medication, and I can do it more economically. You might say, well, let's say the dose is 20 milligrams of Benicar. Well, it could be written 40 milligrams of Benicar, take one a day or one half if directed. And my patients are then directed to take the half or the whole, depending upon their blood pressure. But if you write for one a day, then the patient gets 90 tablets, the 30-day supply, 90-day supply. And then if they're only taking half a tablet, that's a 180-day supply. So the point being is the costs would go down for overall medication usage. And in addition, the co-pays would go down because instead of paying the co-pay every 30 or 90 days, it would be pay it every 180 days. So penny wise and pound foolish. Next, I want to talk about atenolol. Atenolol was a medication that never captured my heart. I have been forced to use it until recently because it was the better generic beta blocker. Beta blockers are like Inderal and Coreg and propranolol and metoprolol, and the administrators of these companies have not made it clear that atenolol is not a once-a-day medication. It is a twice-a-day medication, and so many of the studies that have shown the adverse effects to the use of beta blockers were done with atenolol being given once a day instead of twice a day as it should, and so the effect ran out and there were complications due to the fact there was not enough medication around. The new medication a couple of years ago was Coreg, but that is what's called a beta-1, beta-2 blocker, which means people with lung dysfunction, asthma, could have a problem. The new medication, Bistolic, is a strict beta-1, very highly selective for beta-1, which means just affects the heart and the circulation, very little effect on the lungs, and that would be much safer in patients with asthma. In addition, both Coreg and Bistolic have better effects with regard to future development of diabetes. And the same is not true for toprol, metoprolol, or atenolol. So what I want to say to you is I think that these administrators of these medication plans are being very penny-wise and pound-foolish, and they ought to talk to people with considerable clinical experience who are aware of this kind of physiology, which they aren't. They're only aware that the Bistolic costs so much, it's a new one, we're not going to pay for it. When you could prescribe, it comes in a 2.5, 5, and 10, and it's a soft pill. It can easily be broken up, and I teach my patients how to do it literally with a pill in front of me, and I show them how to bite off a little portion. You might say, well, what if they're older? What if they're unsteady? What if they have this and that? You can't use any medication in everybody all of the time. You have to use some clinical judgment, and there is a time and a place to use generic Coreg, which is carvedilol, or generic toprol, which is metoprolol succinate, and as a result, you have to show them to do it, how to do it. But if you prescribed, and the patient could use it in this fashion, the 10 milligram Bistolic, and they could bite off approximately a quarter. There will be the naysayers out there say, oh, you can't expect people to bite off a quarter, to which I can respond, yes, I can expect people to bite off a quarter. And they'll say, well, it's not the same quarter every time. To begin with, look at the shape of the pill. Look, there are ridiculous arguments that have to do with doubting the capabilities of patients. I do not doubt the capabilities of my patients when I see them do it. The same goes for home blood pressure checks. I just had a letter to the editor that was accepted for publication on the use of home blood pressure monitors and specifically the wrist monitors as opposed to the upper arm monitors. And I really do prefer the wrist because they're more portable. You can take them to work. And I want to know what your blood pressure is at work. I want to know what your blood pressure is when you stop here or there on the way home or on the way to work. I don't want you checking your blood pressure on driving, but I would like to have blood pressures in what I call the 9 time zones. Before and after each meal, that's 6. Even if you don't eat those times. In between meals, that's middle of the morning, middle of the afternoon, and at bedtime. Those are the 9 time zones in a day. And I would like to see blood pressures over 3, 4, 5 days, including pretty much all of those time periods, so that I have a continuing blood pressure picture of what your blood pressure is over the entire day. And my patients seem to do it very easily. They like the small wrist blood pressure cuffs, which are a little more expensive than the arm cuffs. I must say that I have a prejudice, but the prejudice is for the company Omron, O-M-R-O-N. If you go to Walmart, you can buy an upper arm Omron blood pressure cuff for around $65. The wrist blood pressure cuffs tend to run around $75 to $125 unless they're on sale, and periodically they do go on sale. But I don't care which wrist blood pressure cuff or upper arm cuff you measure buy, you must bring that to the office where I then do the following. You put the patient's blood pressure cuff on here or here, wherever it goes, and you have them measure the blood pressure, and don't sit there and look at it. With the Omrons, you're supposed to go like this. With some of the others, you can just set it out like this. But regardless, you have them do it by the proper technique, and you watch their technique. When they finish, and you have that number, I write that down. Immediately, if they have a wrist blood pressure cuff, I put on my arm cuff here, and I do my own blood pressure cuff, and I don't tell the patient. And then I have the patient do their wrist, then I do mine, then the wrist, and mine. And there can be major discrepancy in the first 2 or even 4 blood pressure cuff readings. But by the time you get to the 3rd, if there is a constant error, then you say to the patient, okay, subtract the 3 or add the 5 to yours, and it's perfectly fine. Or if it's completely inaccurate, then I'll write on a prescription note, this blood pressure cuff is inaccurate. Please exchange for another. And then they have to bring that cuff in to me to have it verified. Verified, accurate blood pressure cuff is done that way.